I'm sorry, did you say my name? Hello?
Good morning, everybody. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Should we stand? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You can see it. Call the meeting to order, and I'll note for the record that all board members are present. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. We have a full agenda, so we'll jump right in with our administrative portion. And I'll move the approval of the minutes from the August 7th, 2023 board meeting.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any on readiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. I move the acknowledgement of Secretary of State Advisory 2023-03 for electronic votes, state funding. And I do know that the record count will speak on this under new business.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. We'll call upon Mr. Brian Cleary to come forth and to guide us on the ballot adjudication and remake policy.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Brian Cleary, Manager, Ballot Department. Before you should have a copy of the updated ballot adjudication and remake procedure and policy. And a quick summary of the updates. This document was approved by this board in 2012 and up to the new software that we got with it. We have a few pieces of space we come back over and updated within the policy itself. So first thing we did was we had the SOS election official manual instructions on how to remake a ballot using the software. They're pretty vague, so we actually did the procedures. We actually came up with on our own using the system. The next thing we did was remove former category number 11. This category was where the voter filled a noble next to a candidate for an actual office, and then cast a write-in vote for that same candidate and wrote that same candidate's name in there. The Secretary of State's election official manual tells us how to deal with those now as an overvote, so that's not necessarily to be a category within the document itself.
Okay.
All previous categories, there were 10 categories. Except the policy, they may have been renumbered and shuffled around to reflect our new policy. And they break down as follows. Category 1 is ballots that are torn, mutilated, or folded. The first 7 that I'm going to give you are examples of ballots that we're going to mutilate. They basically made it very that in some reason can't turn in scanner. But for the most part, they will be the repeat. So category 1 is full or mutilated. We will take that to the policy. Category 2 is the ballot that didn't turn mark after you got voted. The same kind of any lead amount to do an opposition. That's obviously not a mistake that the voter made, but we want to get that corrected so they can get it counted. Category 3 is UOCAVA and nursing home ballots. Sometimes these are just made on regular paper. So we will have to, our scanners are good enough now that they can actually take these and we can actually adjudicate them, but there may be some where we can't. Category 4 is ballot containing votes for an eligible contest. These are obviously 17-year-old voters. We will go ahead and fix those. Category 5 is an inadvertent mark made by the voter, resulting in the scanner detecting an overvote or indeterminate mark. This is the famous resting mark where one of those we filled in, there's just a dot in the other one. Previously under the previous policy, you guys gave us specific instructions how to remake those. We will continue that going forward. Category 6 is the voter mark. These have voting instructions, so they either check marks they certainly can say, or they use a X legal existing ballot. We will have to remake that. Category 7 is the voter mark the ballot more times than the traditional number of times. However, they also gave us some clear indication of what are 10, so they filled in both ovals. they crossed out one and put not this guy, or put their initials or some indication of clear voter intent on these, for those adjudication. The next three categories are manual rebates.
One second, Ben, for the first 7 categories,
Mhm.
we're adding we always adjudicated these items. I thought are these just being renumbered and we're just adding the adjudication procedure in there? Or
Yeah, we've always, these are obviously to be adjudicated on screen. We're not physically going to have a remake ballot. So we're gonna we use the software to adjudicate it on screen, and we'll print out a report that will match up with the two, take the place of the remake ballot.
Okay,
So the next three categories are manual remakes only. These are our three, if you remember, the run as is categories. So how the voter did something on the ballot that caused, we can't determine voter intent. So they were just run as how the machine reads it. So category 8 is the voter mark, part of the ballots in accordance with the vet instructions, and the rest of the ballot. Category 9 is a true overall, so they mark the number of positions. They don't give any information for status meeting where. Category 10 is the order for the old candidate for national office and the candidate's name, but they are two different names. Those are just treated as an overvote, and we can't determine voter intent. So those are our 10 categories. The final 3 things we did is we added an adjudication process, obviously for each, how do you do that, what are the actual steps for each of the things. We have a checklist that our staff uses for when they do each of these. And then we put a sample of a sample ballot and an adjudication sample from the system that it prints out within the document itself. And I'll take any questions that you might have.
it's by the Secretary of State's office.
We will send it down afterwards, which we did with the previous remake policy. They never give us that, okay, they will acknowledge it, but they will not put it into anything.
But I would say we are the county that started
We are.
with the policy and the remake. I will give we should give ourselves a little kudos that we came up with the original guidelines for how to remake these ballots. And so I thought the Secretary of State had adopted some part of that and included it in the manual
And they actually tell counties to
to use
use
our.
our policy. if they have
Okay,
any
just
questions.
wanted to get that on the record.
Why not?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clary. Any other questions for Mr. Clary? Hearing none, I will move the approval of the ballot adjudication and remake policy.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. The ayes have it. Mr. Clary.
Next up, you should have a copy of the certification data and reports and the official results from the August 8th, 2023 special election. There were a total of 335,356 ballots tabulated for this election, and they break down as follows. On election day, 235,429 ballots were cast. On the vote by mail period, 28-day window, there were 73,741 ballots cast. Early in person here at the board, there were 21,966 ballots cast. Provisionally, there were 3,663 ballots cast. There were 37 post-election days. These were all curbside ballots that were cast on election day. And there were 520 ballots that were returned to us postmarked correctly and then counted as post-vote by mail. Moving on to the vote by mail early person summary. There were a total of 100,779 ballots that were issued during the vote by mail early person voting period. Of those ballots, 96,219 or 95.40% were returned and counted by the ballot department. There were a total of 631 challenged or late vote by mail early person ballots, resulting in a 0.65% challenge rate for this election. That challenge rate drops to 0.16 if you exclude voters who return their ballots late. And below that, you have a breakdown of all the reasons they were challenged, and they break down the different categories when they returned it. I'll take any questions if you have them on the vote by mail.
I just have a question, just in terms of, I know we were looking at the impact of the ID law on our voters and whether or not folks were not bringing the right ID, getting disqualified. And I think after the last election, we asked that we are tracking how the ID law is impacting in the cure period. Do we have that data outlined somewhere? I mean, there's a lot of categories where we've got missing ID or ID not provided, ID invalid. And my question is whether all of that it can be lumped into or is attributable to the compliance with the voter ID law. So it's not clear to me from this data, which is why I wanted to make sure we were tracking separately. I know other counties are looking, and there was an article sometime recently about counties being concerned about the impact of the ID law. I just want to make sure we are tracking it so we can see how it's impacting our voters. And I don't know if we're doing that. I think we kind of said, hey, can you track that as well as the opportunity to cure? How many people are coming to cure? And I think after the last election, you said there wasn't any significant impact. But I need to see we'd like to see the data to make sure. I mean, I have no doubt that you were, but as the elections go on, we really need to get a handle on how that, if that is even impacting.
And I would say just to that, you wouldn't necessarily see it on this absentee, but you'll see it in the provisional.
Okay,
Because the ID rules for voting by mail, those remain the same.
yeah,
But we
but
did-
in the provisional, to my point,
We did.
it says missing identification, and it says not matching identification, you know. We need to understand what the impact is, and if these numbers, I mean, 17%, 17.43% of rejections for missing identification. Then we've got non-matching identification, it's another 3%, and so that's 20%. I just, is the missing address part of that issue? I don't understand, based on the way we're capturing the data, and I want to understand what potential impact there is. And we should understand that, I think, for the benefit of the voters in our process.
Yeah, and we definitely saw on the provisionals, the missing ID went up substantial
Yeah.
from where it was.
Yeah.
It was, and there was, and I think we even had 42 provisional envelopes in which there was last four of the social security written in a different part, but we're not allowed to use that. Where before you could have, and those would have been okay.
Did we send out notices? Did we send out notices, or was that? What's our cure period, our obligation under? I just want to understand how we're responding to some of that, and if we need to respond differently, that's all.
So they have until Saturday after we come in.
I know, so we sent the notices to those folks.
We send them, that's wonderful.
Okay,
It's fixing their whole issues, so every February. And I think on provisional election, they're given a card telling them that they must come down and cure their provisional in order for it.
well, that's for the election day.
If they didn't, yes, they like
Okay.
that.
Because we won't be through all the
No,
provisions by that
that's right.
time, but what we did is there's a mandatory Secretary of State form that we had to hand out that we do, but we've created a Cuyahoga card also. Then when the poll worker sees that someone did not provide identification, then they give them that card. And that
So that's
card-
election day, I get that, so, but anyways, I'm not to belabor the point, it would be
Yeah.
great to have the data. We need to be mindful, I mean, really take a look at on the provisionals. I know we're always looking at provisions, but what part of it is impacted by, some of these changes, so. This, you can just give us that information about the cure, and that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions on the vote by mail section?
Let me ask you, Mr. Flair, and Mr. Pilati, was the 95% rate, was that unprecedented? For that return?
It's the highest in time. been.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, it was an
Usually we're at
extraordinarily high number, yeah.
That's the highest like that.
Thank you.
But
Okay.
moving on to the provisional voting summary. There were a total of 4,449 provisional ballots cast during this election. Of those ballots, 3,663 or 82.33% were valid and tabulated by the ballot department. There were a total of 786 invalid provisional ballots, resulting in a 17.67% rejection rate. That rejection rate dropped down to 6.81% when voters who had already cast a provisional ballot were not registered as excluded. And below that, you see a breakdown of each of the categories, why they were rejected. There is some historical data at the back of your thing, if you want to see the previous rejection rates for like election for August, I think they cover around 8 or 9%. So it is up significantly compared to previous elections.
So that rejection rate for the invalid provision was almost tied to the state's identification percentage. We just need to understand what that really is. And, what can be done maybe to fix that. Thank you.
Ballot remakes, during this election, 249 ballots, sheets were processed in accordance with the new adjudication policy. The overall remake for this rate, for this election was 0.074%. If you exclude the UOCAVAs and individuals who voted for an eligible contest, that remake rate drops down to 0.018%, and then you have a breakdown of each of the categories. There were a total of 13 overvotes for this election, resulting in a 0.0039% overvote rate. 967 precincts were involved in the election. Voter history is now complete and is waiting consent on the Secretary of State. Ballot reconciliation is ongoing. There are no automatic recounts for this election. The requested recount deadline is Tuesday, September 5th, due to the holiday. We're moving in a day. The post-election audit will begin, as long as there's no requested recount, on Wednesday, September 6th at 9 a.m. at the Burns. Any questions if you have any?
Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Clary, for that report, and we have several motions before us, so I will move the authorization to approve the remake of the applicant stand ballot from the August 8th, 2023 special election.
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, any unreadiness? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. I move the authorization to approve absentee ballots from the August 8th, 2023 special election.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, any unreadiness? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. I move the authorization to approve provisional ballots from the August 8th, 2023 special election.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. And I move the acknowledgement of the pre and post-test result. The pre and post-test result. Did you
Are they circulating?
did you circulate those?
They should be.
Oh, were they back here? Did they see it?
No, they're not in your mind. They should be in their own individual black
Oh,
letter
yeah.
somewhere.
Oh.
Yeah, one right
Yeah,
here.
they were. It should be really small.
Okay.
Okay.
This might, I don't.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw it.
I don't think, I don't know if that's it. Looks like it's too much. But what's one with that?
Which one?
I think it's the smallest.
The
of-
small one?
Small. I saw it earlier.
Yeah, I think that's it there.
Okay. Yeah.
That was mine.
I don't need to review.
I have three.
I did see, so we hold on that motion for a second, just so the board can.
Yeah, just need to speak for it really quickly. I did it.
All right, so I will move the acknowledgement of the pre and post test results of the vote tabulation system from the August 8th, 2023 special election.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. And I move the certification of the official results of the August 8th, 2023 special election.
Happily second that.
All right, it's happily seconded. No discussion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you, and on to item 5, I move to acknowledge the date, time, and place of the post-election audit for the August 8th, 2023 special election, Wednesday, September 6th at 9:00 a.m. at the BOE warehouse.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you, Mr. Clary. Okay, on to our next item, candidate and petition services, and the chair recognizes Mr. Brent Lawler. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. Before you should have 13 protests in the city of Cleveland Judicial Courts and for the city of Euclid.
Okay.
I believe we're taking the Cleveland Municipal Courts first. There are two bases for the protest. One is that the candidates should be filing 3,000 signatures rather than the 50 that we've been advising them for 23 years to do. And the other one is the requirement in the city of Cleveland's charter that they have to be a resident of Cleveland for 12 months, which is not consistent with the Ohio Guide Code. You want me to read my overview or?
Yes, please.
The Cleveland Municipal Court District is comprised of the city of Cleveland and the village of Brown Hall. And that's an important distinction.
That's
The revised code section 1901.071 states in relevant part. In the Cleveland Municipal Court, judges shall be nominated only by petition. Petition shall be signed by at least 50 electors of the territory of the court. It shall be in the statutory form and should be filed within the time prescribed by the charter of the city of Cleveland, petition candidates for municipal office. Section 4 of the Cleveland Charter conflicts with the ORC by stating candidates for office to be voted for in any regular municipal election under the provisions of the charter shall be nominated at a nonpartisan primary election to be held on the second Tuesday in September prior to a regular municipal election. Thus, these municipal judicial candidates file directly to the November election. They have no primary because the ORC states judges shall be nominated by petition only. For offices filing for elections, candidates file declaration of candidacy, which is different than nominating. In a petition, whereas the candidates for general election are filing nominating petitions. If the protest argument is accepted by the Board of Elections, Cleveland judicial candidates would be required to file 3,000 signatures to have a primary election in September. Neither of these instances have occurred in the 23 years that I've been here. Furthermore, if the board agrees that judicial candidates meet the 3,000 signatures, then I guess we would ask that you uncertify every candidate that we certified a few weeks ago. And I just another comment for myself. It is a two-community district. Bradnall is not a charter community. And I guess my question would be, the city of Cleveland's charter cannot, I don't believe, override Bradnall. So how do we treat people that run and live in Bradnall for Cleveland judge? They require to be 3,000 signatures. I don't know that the charter from one of this county can override another community. We received a opinion from the law director, Mark Griffin, from the city of Cleveland, who states in part interpreting section 5 to apply candidates for municipal court should be inconsistent with state law, and the nominating petitions for municipal court, judge and clerk of courts must be signed by at least 50 electors of the territory. And I believe that we were going to have Jeffrey Mixon start us off today.
Yes, I just wanted you to enter into your record to tee up what you needed to from your research on staff, and then we'll actually go into the hearing. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowler. I will now call upon Mr. Jeffrey Mixon. If you're here, sir, please come to the podium. Is Jeffrey Mixon in the house? Mr. Mixon, if you would please state and spell your name for the record, and then you will be sworn in by our court report.
My name is Jeffrey, Jeffrey. Last name is Mixon, Mixon.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mixon. The floor is yours. If you would present your case as to why you are protesting Jeff Johnson and then Sheila Turner McCall.
Okay. Bear with me. I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous. I'll start out. It's right here in the first paragraph. I, Jeffrey Mixon, am an adult over the age of 18, resident and an elector of the city of Cleveland, Ohio, Calhoun County. I hereby submit this objection to the candidacy of Jeff Johnson for the candidacy of the Cleveland Municipal Court seat in the upcoming election. Cleveland is a home rule municipality, and the city of Cleveland charter requires persons interested in running for any at-large seat to obtain 3,000 signatures of the municipality.
Thank you, sir. And it's your contention that that same statement would be applicable to Sheila Turner McCall. Are you protesting her on that same basis?
Yes.
Okay, so excellent. So I think we understand the context of your protest against these two candidates. Chair now will yield to Mr. Musson to give us some context to what we're handling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, my office concurs with the opinion of the law director. The Cleveland municipal courts are all municipal courts throughout Ohio are established by the revised code. They're not charter created bodies. It's not like the federal government where you have 3 branches of government. Municipal government is different. These state created entities are governed by the revised code that created them. And 1901.06 and 1901.07, where provide that where a municipal court covers a territory larger than a single municipal territory, the 50 signature petition applies.
Okay. Thank you. We've heard from Mr. Mixon. We've now heard opinion from council. I'm going to ask the chair to, the chair will recognize Mr. Jeffrey Johnson. Is Mr. Johnson? Go ahead. We need you over here because of the camera. Mr. Mixon, if you, we're going to use the same podium so the person's on the Zoom call can see it. Mr. Johnson, if you could please.
John, Jeff Johnson, JD, He's telling the story that doesn't make about the truth of all truth. I did. Heard Mr. Nixon's argument about those surgeries. That is generally for this. Yes. I have 10 times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the board that we respect and acknowledge that the Charter City of Cleveland is, in fact, a community of the city of Cleveland. Even the power of charter, citizens, things change. But also, as a state senator, I also recognize the old reports. And when it comes to the creation of municipal court, there's actually a mutual relationship. There's a lot of folks talk about how the state rules the municipal court that is not accurate in certain areas, particularly the nominating process. So just when it comes to this protest, it is important that we do look to the state of Ohio, and we do look to section 19C A1. What it is that it's preempted. If there's a municipal court governing the state government, the state of that will be properly that basically taken a certain subject matter and say only the state will dictate this. In another area, particularly by section 5 of the charter, I'm sorry, the charter, it states that both the chapter 5 is both a preemption and an allowance for the city to do some things, but on the question of signatures, it is preempted. That has been read to you. I wanted to provide my own exhibit showing state law that specifically states the petition shall be 50 signatures. And it also preempts, I should say, the use of a nominating petition versus a primary. So in section 5, there are 2 preemptions by state law, and that is signatures, and that is dealing with using a petition for nominating and for signature only being 50. The other exhibit I provided to you just was the front page of my petitions for this year's election, which noted at the very top, as the BOE always tells us that we cannot bring more than 150 signatures. That's because it's 3 times the 50, which is also a requirement. So I was just giving you that to show that the BOE has made it clear that you cannot bring more than 150 signatures if you wanted to run for municipal court in the city of Cleveland. So on the issue of signatures, I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I will now turn over to the board for any questions that you would have.
Just a point of clarification, so certainly I hear that I believe Ohio law preempts the charter on this issue, but the issue is not preempting. The requirement is that there be nominating petitions, and that for judicial races in Cleveland Municipal, for a Cleveland Municipal judge, that they be made by nominating petitions. So that is that correct? That's not preempted. That's actually the requirement. Is my understanding.
Right. I think maybe it's what preemption is and what is standing on everything law. The charter, while you read, maybe it applies to municipal officers. Judges are not officers of the city of Cleveland.
officers of the state up through the judiciary and the Supreme Court. So the requirements to nominate candidates for municipal office are separate and apart from judges in the instance of including municipal court where it covers more than one territory. It's only 50 signatures. The 3,000 in the nominating process for the charter.
So, and I do understand, we could also receive a legal opinion from our own counsel, but if I recall, you made a distinction between the offices that the charter applied to the mayor. And your interpretation was in fact that municipal court can't talk today. Municipal judicial races and offices are not included in that charter provision. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. Yeah, it seems to me to be pretty clear based on the law. I mean, if there's express language calling out the requirement for 50 signatures for Cleveland Municipal Court.
That's right.
And the judges can only by them, only by petitions. Pretty clear. Unfortunately, for you, Mr. Nixon, you did get a copy of this same thing. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm sure you'll recognize Chief Attorney Paul was with us virtually. Yes, yes.
I don't know what you want to do here. Just since you're, if you don't mind. So I guess my question is, to me, it's, we have to revise code, and it's specifically, I think it's 1901-07C1. I mean, it just clearly says, in the Cleveland Municipal Court, the judges shall be nominated only by petition. And it says here, the petition shall be signed by at least 50 electors. So I guess I'm confused. I mean, I understand what the charter is something else, but the other thing is, it clearly the charter for living in the city, and the city would be in Cleveland, and this is a two-city district. So am I looking at that correctly? Okay, to me, it's pretty straightforward. So I agree with you.
Yeah, one other question, because I think Brett Lawler raised the issue. I mean, it doesn't make sense for the charter for the city of Cleveland to govern the electors of Bretnall, the other, two-part kind of, I mean, I understand for residency purposes, it's considered one. No, I don't think we ever considered that question. That hasn't come up before, as I recall. So Brett raises a good question. We don't need the answer today, but I've got some guidance from council on that.
This is classic.
But I think it goes to your original point, though. These municipal courts are creations of the legislature. They set the boundaries, they set the rules. That's why they're in the revised codes. They're not creations of charters. I mean, the actual jurisdiction and power comes from the state. So,
But that doesn't address the two-city question that Brent raised in that. I would at some point can get some guidance on.
we have other multiple city districts. I never know one city is chartered as another, because if you were to say that, then no one could ever live in Raton and be a judge of the city, if it's only residents in. So, I mean, I guess that's the way I was looking at it, so.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's any case law in case we encounter this in some other instance, just to see if there's any precedent for that issue being raised. And it's worth looking into. I mean, to Lisa's point, absolutely. I mean, clearly the relevant Ohio statute covers Cleveland Municipal Court, Cleveland Municipal Court, Akron Municipal Court, Hamilton, and so on. So yeah, I think that's state law is pretty there. Yeah, but this other question should be just take a look at it and see if there's some guidance or anything interesting we might find out about.
Yeah.
That's coming.
We like it. Yeah.
We do interesting at Cuyahoga County Board.
In fairness to Judge McCall, if you would like to be recognized, if you would unmute yourself, and we will, if you would like to.
So, board members, this is Attorney Kay Ranke. I am appearing on behalf of Judge Sheila Turner McCall, who is also present on the Zoom.
Good morning.
May I be heard on behalf of Judge McCall?
The chair recognizes Kay Ranke.
Thank you. Thank you, panel members of the board. I concur with the statements made by candidate Jeffrey Johnson. I would indicate that as board member Ms. Sticken just indicated, I do believe Ohio Revised Code 1901.07C1 controls on this issue. And I do believe that as specified in the actual statute, it does say for Cleveland Municipal Court, judges shall be nominated by petition, and that petition shall be signed by 50 certified signatures. The 2019 amendment to the city charter, as referenced, relates to other matters, not the number of signatures only for purposes of petition. I would ask the board to recognize the plain language of the law and also acknowledge that the signatures that were previously filed have been certified. There are 50 signatures, and we would ask that the petition go forward. Thank you.
You're gonna take that as confusion.
Everything we said,
Okay.
yes. I move to deny the protests, plural, followed by Jeffrey Nixon regarding the number of petition signatures required for Jeff Johnson candidate for judge. And Judge Cleveland Municipal Court for the November 7th, 2023 general election.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Any unreadies?
No, I just want to thank you, Mr. Mixon, for coming down here. We appreciate, obviously, it's our job to consider these issues, and thank you to our legal counsel for providing us guidance on this.
I concur. Thank you. Question is before us. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and it is so ordered. Thank you. We'll now call upon Mr. Johnson to come back. We have a protest here in Mr. Johnson's already been sworn in. The chair will recognize you, sir, and you may present your case. The previous, some of the ideas that were brought up previously is very relevant to this protest. And it speaks to the question that was stated. As you know, in my protest, I provided the fact that in 2019, the city of Cleveland citizens by 76% of the vote passed a charter amendment that required a residency of 12 consecutive months before someone can run for elected office in the city. So the first thing is to focus in on the language that went before the citizens. It is noted that it was not separated out where only city council mayor, but it said that to be eligible to be a candidate for elected office in the city. And this is probably, about my understanding, the first time that this charter, I could be wrong, has been raised relative to, I know it is for the first time for the elected office of judge in the city of Cleveland. And in my protest, I made note that my opponent, the respondent Major, had become a citizen of the city of Cleveland in February of this year. I don't think there's any question that that alone is showing that it was less than 12 months. But obviously it doesn't end there because it's a judicial office. I have provided in my exhibits, first of all, proof that in fact he fell short of 12 months. I have with me also and exhibits that show that during the 2019 election that it was it did not support passage, that it dealt with all three. All four, I should say. There's 4 elective offices in the city of Cleveland. You've got mayor, council, judge, and clerk of courts. Those are the 4 offices that That is, Village of Bracknell is included. So I do have exhibits relative to that. I'll ask the chair whether you can see that point, or if you want proof that there was that discussion, there was that belief that this was not limited. So the first thing I want to establish was that the 76% of the folks were voting on language that said all elected offices in the city of Cleveland. I just want to establish that point first. And I have that, and I have with me for exhibit 12 is the Charter Commission. Just for you get a sense of their notes, and their final thing that they voted on clearly was no distinguishing. There was no separation with the 4 elected positions. So having said that, I forgot. I'm sorry. And excuse me, Mr. Johnson, if we're heading out of exhibits, is Judge Major here?
Yeah.
He sent a message that he's unable to attend.
He's in it. I just wanted to make sure, so he would have a copy of what's being disseminated. I actually got 15 copies of that. I've actually made 15 copies.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, yes, please. So the first step was to decide whether the charter language is appropriate for to consider that. So that's why I believe that
Okay, so I guess I'm sort of stuck it because you just said come up here before and had a discussion that this is a unique office. It was created by the Ohio Revised Code. Revert us to an Ohio Revised Code section. So I guess that's my first question. I feel like that's a bit of an inconsistent position. My second question to you would be, the charter specifically says the city of Cleveland, and as we did discuss this, so that's my second question, because you know, the orders of Bracknell are this district too, and so are you seeing only a resident who is only a judge in this court? I guess that's what I'm confused about. So if you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
I don't know. I'm trying to lay a foundation, but the first question is.
I feel like you're having a position with our discussion on this being a court that's created by the Ohio Revised Code and governed by it, which would trump the charter. Additionally, that was my second question about this being a two-city district.
It is important for, as I mentioned earlier with the protest of Mr. Nixon, that the charter is very significant and being supportive. And I also mentioned that there was this mutual relationship between the state law and the charter. It's not a separate. So and I mentioned that when people say that the courts are run by state law, that is not 100% true when it comes to the nominating process. So I'm consistent with that. That's why I said that in one area of signatures and that required nominating petition were preempted. But I also mentioned that that was in section 5, that was not the entire case. What happened on 2019, the citizens amended section 5. And fundamentally, the question is, did they amend it with the 4 offices? Or did they amend it with just 2 that some folks want to believe, even though evidence when it comes to the actual language and actual campaigning shows otherwise? That's what my point. So I'm very consistent on the issue of the preemption. The area of nomination process is not preempted. In fact, if you look at state law, and that's it is in my original file, and we look at section 19, it says that this is C. First, let me rewind. When we had Director Griffin send you the opinion, he focused on
section of 19, section 19, before this language. This language said, notwithstanding he said, notwithstanding, you know, the word notwithstanding. In following municipal courts, the judge shall be nominated and elected as follows. And if you see the breakdown of 19, they deal with different states, different cities with different paragraphs. So Cleveland has its own paragraph. If you look at it, so it's not just a paragraph in the middle of it, what I highlighted in my filing, it says it shall be in the statutory form and shall be filed in a manner and within the time prescribed by the charter of the city of Cleveland for filing petitions and candidates with us. Memorandum of support is in the first paragraph under memorandum. So when it comes to the manner and timing of the nomination process, it is not preempted by state. That is a mutual relationship that I alluded to earlier, and that I'm restating the name. And that is that there is a sitting of a seat up to candidates for to the charter. And the BOE does the same thing. I have also exhibits that show, and of course we can just confirm it because you know, for example, there is a handout that's given to those who are seeking to run for judge. Handout here that says, please see charter governs filing requirements for judicial office. This is your language. Cleveland City Charter governs filing requirements for judicial offices. There are some who have been saying that judicial candidates is not part of the charter. This language that I have here, and also we have Secretary of State that also within its when it provides to us as candidate, it states also look at the charter of the city of Cleveland for governing. And I will also point that there is a section that we are aware of when it comes to the Cleveland's charter that is in section 8 that you rely on, what you tell us as candidates, and that is that we have 5 days if we fall short of our chances if you have 5 days to cure. That is not state law. That is section 8 of the Cleveland City Charter. And that is another process that the Board of Election follows from the City of Cleveland Charter. So the question is not whether the charter governs actions by the nomination process. The question is, and I think that's whether section 5 applies. Given this new section 5 that occurred in 2019. And when you add together the fact that we already acknowledge the charter as part of what governs the nominating process, and even the Board of Election has that relationship and articulates that reality in our Secretary of State. We also have a state law that says go to the Cleveland Charter to look for the manner and timing of nomination.
Mr. Jones, go ahead, we put a pin in there.
I just want to make sure I understand your argument, and I think you maybe did clarify it for me. It seems like you, just so we're clear, in the revised code, it says manner and time prescribed by the charter. In terms of form and filing, it says form and shall be filed within the manner. So your argument is that language is what would
includes residents.
Yeah, that's what I want to clarify. That yeah, so with that, the language of the statute deals only with the nominating petition process and doesn't cover presidency at all. In which case, you defer to the charter on the residency requirement.
I'm not so sure I would agree with your argument that 1901-07C1 covers the residency requirement. It speaks to the manner and timing of filing the nominating petitions. So I actually think the better argument is that the Ohio law doesn't address the residency requirement for judicial candidates in the municipal court. And then maybe just have to defer to the charter for that, but I'm gonna look to our legal counsel to see if our interpretations are erroneous. Oh, wait, yeah, that's a question for you and then our legal counsel,
Yes,
if that's
yeah,
permitted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson and then Mr. Musso.
I think the first, as I stated, the first clarity is that it's not preempted. The state has not taken control of the nominating process, whether it's residency or whether it's any other area outside of signature law. That's why I say nominating. So other than that, I believe everything that's preempted, goes to the charter is that language that's in us to the charter. I'm saying that a nominating petition. And part of that rule process, before you can even file, is you have to fulfill the residency requirement. And I think, so I define manner, including the whole nominating process, and I think residency is part of it. Because someone cannot come who's living in another city, come and just file petitions and be expected to be nominated. That's how I.
One other question for you, Mr. Johnson. I didn't see that the legal opinion of Mr. Griffin even covered residency, or did I miss it? It seemed to me that the legal opinion was basically state law preempts everything related to section 5 of the charter, and I didn't see that he pulled out any specific language around residency, and that would be, if that was my read of the legal opinion. Is there anything in the legal opinion that supports your argument that the amendment to that was adopted to section 5 of the Cleveland charter governs? Because I just don't see anything in his legal opinion that seems to me to be a straightforward, hey, section 5 is completely preempted. But again, maybe
He stated in his opinion that and so for him to write, I disagree that he said now, even after the 2019 amendment, it doesn't apply. And I think it does. And then, so there's twofold. It applies, we've used the charter in other sections. So he says that it does not apply. And I believe that the state law tells us to look to the charter. And then at that point, I believe the new language that was passed by the citizens incorporates all 4 of the officers who are seeking election in the city, and therefore it doesn't.
can you just walk us through? You gave us the handout, can you walk us through the language or the amendment that you think is support your argument?
We're talking about the charter language or the state.
The recommendation that's discussed on page 9 of the charter review. Is that one?
The Charter Review Commission final report that deals with section 5 am I on the same page with you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where the amendment is that where there's been a change to include the judges as an office. One of the-
And I understand, like, the understanding that the charter is-
Number one, it doesn't single out. That's the first answer. It doesn't say mayor and council. It says specifically to be eligible to be a candidate for elected office in the city. That is the first person. Okay, the first thing I read is the final page. Yeah, where's that? That is in my section. You have, I have to certify a copy that's certificate that you guys certify, you actually.
One.
Yeah, issue 20, and it's among my, if you still have my exhibits from my filing, and I'll tell you what exhibit it is. It's the very first one. It states in the first sentence that to be eligible to be a candidate for elected office in the city. And so.
But where is the language that you said incorporates the 4 offices? Where is that?
Let me try the way I do it. It said, if you want to run for elected office in the city, you have to be here 12 consecutive months ahead of time. There are 4 offices, elected offices in the city.
Where is that stated? That's what I'm looking for.
I
Where
guess
is
the reality is, it's stated in the fact that in city, in the city of Cleveland, there's only 4 offices in the city of Cleveland, municipal offices. No, that's it. There's state legislators.
Is there a document, something in the charter that specifically says that those are the 4 offices? That's not just
There are places in charter that alludes to, and I was mentioned earlier about municipal officers, and it talks about council and mayor. And the charter singles out council and mayor when it comes to recall, when it comes to signatures. Well, it doesn't say mayor, but signature says. And so. It's part of the charter that's the language for change of charter. You also deal with the intent of this language. If they intended it to be just for mayor and council, they would have put it in there. Also, the actual campaign and discussion dealt with judges as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there. I want to hear, we have a couple of questions here at the table, and I think Mr. Musson also wants to speak.
Your language of discussion now in this Cleveland, and this is the city of Cleveland. The official for Bratnall in Cleveland is an official for a court district. So I still haven't, I guess, that hurdle of it being the city specifically referring to Cleveland residence requirement. That question hasn't been answered, because as we know, someone can live in Bratnall as it is part of the court. So do you have any response to that? Because I guess that's still my main question to you.
Yeah, this. When the state created districts. What people are, some folks like, I'll get you answer the question this way. Some folks like us because their Bratnall is part of the municipal court district. Therefore, no residency requirement for anybody outside of the 59 municipalities, in the county.
I think it would be extraordinary to ignore the language, and what was passed by the citizens. I believe that the state law relationship with the city, when it comes to the municipal courts, that Bracknell is part of Cleveland relative to all factors. Because it deals in because of the relationship between the state, city, and historically, there's mutuality. One thing and everything, you let you do some things here. Now, I don't know if anyone, and so my questions, my answer to you is that should not determine whether we do it relative to any other jurisdiction that, the short nature of that. This is by the citizens and the state and not created here. So, does that satisfy your question?
Well, I think that's the answer, so.
Yes,
I was basically heading down the same road, and
Yeah.
if we were to use Genesis interpretation, I would still be back all right. That would be, we sort of use that. That's the way. If you look at that, you judge what your opinion is a gap living so they could. Basically.
To ask
Can
Mr.
I ask one
Bussin.
other thing? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yes, why don't you go next?
So here's where I'm stuck. Because, we generally defer to the opinion of the law director. When it comes to issues of the charter. And I'm concerned because I don't see that your law director and the law director of City of Cleveland has eked out the same position that you are advocating, the same position that you're advocating. And part of this opinion actually says, under the charter, the elected officers of the city are specifically council members and the mayor. See section 24, which provides a relevant part that members of council shall be elected for a term of 4 years. And section 68 provides basically the term of years for the mayor. See also section 15 of the charter, which provides a relevant part that all elections provided by the charter, whether for the choice of officers or the submission of questions to voters, shall be conducted by the election authorities prescribed by general law of the state. Again, it's this, I'm stuck on this preemption issue, and his opinion, interpreting the Cleveland Charter, which basically says that state law completely preempts the section 5. And I understand what you're arguing on residency, but on how we could proceed through issues on California also. And then the question I have for Mr. Musson and maybe for Mr. Johnson also is there, it's clear from the nominating petition for the preemption. The residency issue, I agree with it, a little trickier, but I'm trying to understand, is it the residency at the time of filing the petition? Or is the residency what is the person's residency at the time they take office? Because I think there is in its state law a distinction between the two. So I would be quiet because there's a lot of questions about this, and your arguments are making us take a closer look at this. Again, your law director haven't really covered this. So in my view.
Mr. Bussin.
Sure. So I think we started at the top. The Ohio Constitution gives the voters and municipalities the right to establish a charter. Article 18. Of the Ohio Constitution. That provides the laws Article 4 of the Ohio Constitution gives the General Assembly the right to create judicial offices, power the states that is reserved to the General Assembly. The General Assembly has pulled through certain provisions of the charter, which is law, 19. But 1901.06A, it does address the residency. And it states that the municipal judge during the term of office shall be a qualified elector and a resident of Secretary of the Board to which the judge is elected. So upon office, you be a resident of the territory. To run, there is no provision governing qualifications to be a candidate for municipal office.
Up until 2019.
He doesn't have the authority under Article 18 to
Preempt the state
create
law.
courts. Or
Yeah,
qualified
There
judges.
is no, I'm sorry, there is no state law dealing with residency for nominating. I just want to make sure to distinguish, sometimes they blend them.
I think the board has a good handle on what the argument is, what the advice of counsel is. So at this point,
For not the board, so I've heard comments, it's troubling for me when there are statements made that the municipal court judge is not part of this charter. When in fact we use it in many different ways for the municipal court election process. And the decision here that says that the new amendment 5 done by 76 people. If you're saying today and set the precedent from this point on, that vote was only for mayor and council. I'm troubled by that because I know how it was presented to people. And I know how it was fought against by people. It was that more than just those two offices. So I understand the difficulty condition. I don't believe that, but I believe that given the nature of that jurisdiction, that Bracknell and Cleveland will be treated the same way relative to the residency requirement of the nomination process. That was my answer to that question. But there are other municipalities, in this case, it takes Mills. So just for the vote of the folks relative to that, and what they believe they're voting for, is troubling to me. And I understand for this reason, but thank you for letting me.
Thank you.
The only other comment I would make, and I'm, concerned, and I want to make sure your response to my other question. Does the charter somewhere say that the elected officers include the judicial office? And I thought I heard you say that's not. Because you've given us this exhibit, which is the review commission and the recommendations, but were these ever adopted and codified into the city charter?
Yes.
But it did not include.
It did not limit.
But it did not express, I mean, there's language that I quoted from the law director, but so I just want to make sure I understand, there's no language that says that the judicial candidate is an elective office of the.
Charter. You have it in all in your documents, you say it's governed, and so it's inconsistent. And you guys have, if you within your literature, Cleveland Charter, even the Secretary of State, see, therein lies, it doesn't say it, but we use it. And all of a sudden, the residency voted by the people, that's not relevant, even though it is.
I would say in response to that, we would rely on the law director to tell us that we were, somehow not interpreting it correctly.
I've been dealing with the charter for a lot longer than he has. Thank you.
thank you. And so it is now in the hands of the board and. Yes.
Yeah, motion to deny the protest.
Okay, the speaker has moved to deny the protest filed by Jeffrey D. Johnson regarding residency requirements for Mark Major, candidate for the municipal court judge for election.
I will second the motion that comment that we appreciate the advocacy of Johnson today. And actually the advocacy of Mr. Nixon.
Yes.
We probably should have, and we should acknowledge that we have received all of these documents, and I assume they will be made a friendly amendment to make all of this a part of the record if
Yes.
if we need
And I would say is, it was mentioned in the testimony that these cases have pressed us to open some questions.
There's also an issue with definitely we can we have options and we want and in our agree. So I think to your point, regarding the opinion legal being provided at section 5 doesn't apply. And to my other colleague's point, which is where I was stuck, which is, if we're looking at Isabel City, if we exclude rationale, this is not to me just the office for that reason. This is for multiple cities. So I'm clear. And I want to thank the protesters as well for raising these issues.
One last comment, if I may, before we go, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I think we have this coming up on the other Euclid protest where there is a charter review commission. And I would encourage municipalities to get the charters reviewed and looked at, and whatever amendment need to be made, to incorporate express language, it will help us, it will allow for some of these nuances, maybe the city of Cleveland charter needs to be amended to obviously to specifically call out the 4 offices and so forth and so on, because it just makes our job difficult. But again, I will need to support the motion because we tend to and don't like to err from deviating with the opinion of the law directors who are interpreting the council. If those their opinions are in error, we will leave it to the bodies, the respective municipal bodies to address it. So for those reasons and the reasons that we discussed today, I would like to write a rule about our council and the city of Cleveland law director in supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No, Mr. Chairman. Okay, thank you. The motion's properly before. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. It is so ordered. Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mariah Crenshaw. Ms. Crenshaw, present. Crenshaw comes before us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please, statement spelled for the record. Your name and the
Mariah IAHCREN Hopwood, get me. I'm ready.
Please tell them to swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
Several candidates regarding the number of petition signatures required. And for the record, those candidates are Sidney Strickland, Sample, Russo, Martin Sweeney, Bill B. Turner, and Johnson. Also, that same issue, the number of petitions as well as the residency requirement, which we just deliberated on some moments ago. So having encompassed all of those, the floor is yours and you may present your case.
Thank you. So I am the one who started this mess. I'm the one who started questioning whether or not the signatures that had been collected by the candidates was sufficient to meet the mandates of the charter. And as listening to everyone this morning, I think the board here in this decision not to grant those protests based on a few things I will discuss those things. I would like to give you what I consider my opposition motion or legal opposition to the legal part.
Passed out, do we have copies for our respondents?
Yes.
Sidney
You
Strickland,
should
Sample,
have enough. for
Joseph
everyone.
Russo, Heather McCullough, Martin Sweeney, Earl Turner. Yes, yes, she
If
is she
you don't
here?
have enough, I have more.
Is she here?
I don't know that. I don't
Or
know.
any of our respondents here, make sure you get a copy or your representatives. Yes, thank you.
Was there one here?
Yeah, I know. Okay, what do you need to know about that? Yeah. Okay, I had an opportunity to review Mr. Griffin's legal opinions for the clerk of courts as well as for the judicial fees. And I think what's problematic to me is that I have not heard certain language, even in Mr. Griffin's opinion. Is that and why these petitions were filed. So my experience in the legal community is that I see a lot of deflection that goes on when it comes to issues and claims and things of that nature. And I think it was a deflection to bring in Bratton. It was a total deflection. I think that it is a legislative issue that should be taken up with the city council and voters, as well as the state legislature, to include them as electors who are able to run for office and be able to, because we do serve them the jurisdiction. I don't think there's a jurisdictional issue here, and I don't think there's any conflict with the current language of the charter and the general law. No one is doubting that they need 50 signatures, but it's clear that the language of the charter, in that section that we're discussing, which is, give me a moment to find it.
A lot of material.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so if we look at chapter 3, section 5, or section 5, chapter 3, however we want to say this, of the nominating petitions, it is clear. It says the name of any elector of the city shall be printed upon the ballot. When a petition in the form prescribed in this chapter is filed in the elector's behalf with the election authority, that will be step 1, right? That's clear. There's no ambiguity about that. And the elector has been elector of the city for at least 12 consecutive months immediately prior to the next regular election or the next election. There's no ambiguity about this language. The person who is going to office in elected office in the city of Cleveland must have been a resident for 12 consecutive months prior to that election. It's clear, no ambiguity. Elected office. It does not say mayor, it does not say judge, it does not say clerk of courts, it does not say council, it says elected office. So when we're discussing elected office, that would include our judicial candidates and our clerk of courts. After the comment says, as required by law or charter, whichever occurs first, such petition shall be signed by at least 3,000 electors of the city for the nomination of a candidate for an office filled by election from the city at large, comma. Well, let's talk about that. How many races are in the city of Cleveland at large? Judges do not run for wards. They do not run for they run over the jurisdiction of the municipality. And so therefore, they would fall into the at-large language. No one spoke that this morning. I didn't hear it come from the law director in his opinion. I didn't hear it come from Mr. Musman. I didn't hear it come from Mr. Johnson. I heard it come from no one discussing the words at large. So who does that cover? It covers exactly who I say, judicial candidates, because they run at large, every elector. Is there any ambiguity? No, there's no ambiguity here. Is there any issue concerning conflicts with the revised code? No, there's no conflicts. The revised code clearly states 50 signatures. And the Secretary of State produced a manual in October of 2022, which directed all municipal candidates who were going to run in Toledo, who were going to run in Cleveland, in Franklin Municipal County. He directs them in the signature section. He said, look for additional requirements. That directive is also given out in the policy. Petition protocols from the Board of Elections. That's a directive.
While we're getting that, may I pose a question?
Yeah.
Can you speak to the preemption issue on the 3,000 signatures versus the 50 signatures?
There's no conflict there.
Oh, okay, so your issue is not, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, when someone says it's preemptive, revised code concerning that matter is a general law. And it applies to the statewide where there are no requirements within a city charter. The city charter rules. The city charter is what determines it. And the electors, according to Mr. Johnson, 76% of the electors said they wanted 3,000 signatures for anyone that was going to run for a seat at large. It does not exclude, there's no exclusionary or exemptive language in the charter anywhere. No one pointed to it, no one can point to it.
But doesn't state law preempt the charter? Is it?
Not concerning a general law. That is a general law that has been recited by the law director. He cited a general law. And when you look at the manual that was written by the Secretary of State, I gave this to for the didn't I sent that with the protest. Everyone's protest should have the language there. When you look at the language of the municipal terms, not municipal terms, chapter municipal court judges, we've had this discussion about territory. Okay, territory would include Bracknell. Yes, it would. No one's saying that, but no one from Bracknell is running in this race, so that's not even a question.
That's not my issue. That's
Right.
not my, that was a side. Can you address the preemption issue for me?
Right. No, it is, when you look at the manual from the Secretary of State, and I'm going to read this to you. Under signature requirements for the Cleveland Municipal Court, it says, in certain charter municipal corporations, the petition, signature, or filing requirements may differ. Please review the appropriate revised code or charter provisions for requirements specific to your court. There's another note. So he reiterates this to the potential candidates. An individual who is interested in being a candidate for the Akron, Cleveland, or Toledo Municipal Court or the Franklin County Municipal Court are encouraged to review the municipality's charter for the appropriate filing deadline and any additional requirements. When we look at that section of the charter, it's clear. If you're running at large, you need 3,000 signatures. This is a general law.
Yeah, but your argument initially was where the charter is silent. Or where the, not the charter, where the, I'm sorry, but the revised code isn't silent.
Right, and there's
on the nominating, on the nominating.
There's no conflict. The nominating petition.
Okay, so
and
you're
the state minimum. Okay, hold on. Let me reiterate. So maybe I may not have spoken clearly. If there is a municipality or a township that does not have it in place to say we want 3%, 5%, 10%, 3,000 signatures, that's where the revised code kicks in. But home rule kicks in where the charter is not silent on it. And we see this, and you see I added to the first document that I provided to you, that in the city of Euclid and Cleveland Heights, they have the identical language. It clearly states, and I gave this to the receipts from those candidates that are running for judges in those areas. The language in their charter states, if you're running at large in the city, you require 2% of the signatures of the electors from the last election.
But the preemption would be, you said, our revised code very clearly says for Cleveland municipal judges, only 50 signatures are required. So how am I getting to 3,000 signatures? How are you getting?
The rules say it's 3,000. Now, 2019 has agreed to.
Yeah, I wanted to say not so confused because the residents of Randolph have activated the Quincy Charter.
That's a problem for me too, and I've been talking to the state legislators and I've been talking to other people concerning this because it's never been an issue that's ever been brought up until now.
Well, but it could.
It
Would
could
you
be.
agree now, if some resident
Yes.
was here and somebody protested,
Yes,
we
I
rule
do.
according years, we'd have to rule him off the ballot.
I agree. The problem is because our language in the city charter does not indicate right now. It doesn't talk about technology, that is right now. So,
Ms. Dickon?
Yeah, so some of the examples you said were one city courts, I believe. So maybe there is some distinction there because if you're, and I think that's maybe where we're also stuck, because we're obviously not trying to exclude anyone. And I appreciate your this discussion. I think it is important. But you know, like I said, things like this for one city, it's not specifically single out municipal section. You know, the charter obviously would apply to all candidates, and that is a true citywide at large. I guess I don't know that I would consider Cleveland Municipal Court to be at large. I mean, to your point, yes, they run for the whole city, but they're also running for the district parts outside the city. So really, that's not a citywide candidate, that's a district-wide candidate to me. I mean, I guess that's where I'm stuck.
And
Can you-
I
can
think
you-
we're all
yeah.
stuck on that. And I
Yeah.
think that is something that really should be addressed maybe by the higher courts. Because this is something that I don't think that the board has enough information or ability. You know, no one's ever challenged this before, according to Mr. Lawler, 23 years, no one has ever questioned this. And then here I come along and I ask the question. And in my opinion, in reviewing the language of the charter as it stands as of 2019, there must be a 12-month requirement, and that is the home rule, that you live in Cleveland 12 months prior to the election. And that if you're going to run at large. So when we look at the language of the charter where it says at large, who are we talking about?
We've got that.
And
Let's
so
stick it,
your
and then
protest, I
Mr.
thought was
Mus-
for signature numbers, are you now including residency as well?
Well, Ms.
There's
Ms.
a
Conwell is a
residency of
residency
14.
and state.
Oh, okay, so that was.
So I was throwing that out there. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
So we have a good handle on your argument. Mr. Musson, anything you want to chime in? And then I'm going to call upon our respondents.
No, I would just reiterate that Article 18 of the Ohio Constitution does not give municipalities the authority to establish or qualify electors to run for municipal court judge.
And that refers to what you said.
So the home rule, local self-government and police power regulations does not encompass creating courts or qualifying individuals to run for judge.
Okay, thank you. The chair now will recognize Ms. Saffel, if she's here, or representative. Mr. Russo, if you're here, a representative. Ms. McCullough, if you are here or a representative. Mr. Sweeney, if you are here or a representative. Mr. Turner, if you are here or a representative, and Ms. Conwell, if you are here or a representative. Chair now will recognize the response. Thank you. Sir, would you please state your name for the record?
Morning, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
morning.
Larry Zuckerman on behalf of Sydney Strickland Sappel. Your Honor, I would just like to make a motion at this time. I've never done this before, just not spoken, but based on stare decisis in your decision with regard to Mr. Nixon's complaint, we respectfully ask the court to dismiss the complaint based upon the same reasoning that you had issued in that opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other representatives from our other respondents? Again, Mr. Russo, Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Turner, Ms. Conwell. We have other respondents, please.
Mr. Chairman, if the motion is, my motion is denied,
Yeah,
then I'd ask for an opportunity to address the issue raised by the petition.
I mean, if our only motions come from, we,
Yeah, he's making just a request.
yeah, so we'll, we have your, but I've got to take the other
Yes, sir.
cases in consideration. Lawrence, your chair recognizes we could, please state your name and spell it for the record, and we will swear you in as well.
HEATHER, last name MCC, OLLOUGH.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, please. Solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
I would like to state that I would like to incorporate by reference, some of the statements earlier made by Attorney Ranky, by Mark Bisman, Law Director Griffin, Mr. Johnson. To note one of the things that Ms. Crenshaw was saying, that this was a general law. It's not a general law. It's very specific. It specifically mentions the Cleveland Municipal Court and outlines that you need 50 signatures from 50 qualified electors. In addition, as also mentioned by Mr. Johnson, when you pull that petition, you are told you need 50 signatures and you are not allowed to bring more than 150. So even if I had walked in with 3,000 signatures, believing that to be the case, I would have been turned away. I wouldn't have been allowed to turn that many signatures in. So that's a different decision for a different day, because everything would have to be changed. In light of that, I pulled petition receipts for everyone that was on the, that is currently on the Cleveland Municipal Court, ballot for judge this coming November, and I attached it to my response, so everyone should have a copy of that. No one turned in 3,000 signatures. So what applies to one would apply to everyone, and no one would technically be allowed to move forward going this coming November. But I will say that I believe that this was specifically posed to protest particular candidates. Because if this is this person's belief that everyone should have done that, then why wasn't everyone protesting? Certain people were targeted, and I believe that was done to try and determine the outcome of this election. But my position is that 1901.07 controls, which says that for Cleveland Municipal Court, we need 50 signatures.
Before you leave the podium, and maybe each respondent could respond to the residency issue. I think that.
She's not.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Ms. McCullough.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Conwell, if you please state and spell your name for the record, and our court reporter is still there.
Jocelyn Conwell, JOCELYN, Conwell, CONWELL.
And please, you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
First of all, I'd like to incorporate all the comments that have been made with regards to residency, including those from Brent Lawler, person that preceded me, Heather McCullough, and others who spoke with regards to residency. First of all, it was just handed to me, and I have other things here, but it was just handed to me that Ms. Crenshaw is premising her argument on home rule, which we all are aware that all municipalities have the right to home rule. However, in this particular instance, it wouldn't extend to the city of Bracknell. The applicable statute, which is under Title 19, Title 19 of the revised code, specifically 19.01. It enlarges the territory of the Cleveland Municipal Courts to include the city of Bracknell. So, and as the city law department stated, and I referenced Exhibit 8 in my own response, the city of Bracknell, the Title 19 extends the Cleveland Municipal Court's jurisdiction to include the city of Bracknell. So Cleveland home rule definitely would not include Bracknell. If Ms. Crenshaw's interpretation of the statute were correct, it would certainly exclude the city of Bracknell. And per the language provided in Article 19, it says
Section 19 are you referring to the code?
Title 19, let's see, and I'm referring to Exhibit 8. It says.
You need to give us the code section, revised code section here.
Okay, listen. Okay, I'm referring to, well, my exhibit, I just got to simplify and say my exhibit. And if you look at page 2, I would say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the 4th paragraph, and I'm referring to the city's interpretation also. When you see it, it starts with one of the minimum requirements. It's page 2.
What page of your response?
Exhibit 8, the second page.
Oh, okay. Your response.
Okay, if you look at like, I think it's of my response, and if you look at like the 4th paragraph in there, and it's the city's interpretation of the statute as well. And it says the very first line, I think it's the 4th paragraph, one of the minimum requirements is that a municipal court judge must be a resident of the court to which the judge is elected. It doesn't say anything, it doesn't say specifically a resident.
Are you, Ms. Conwell, are you referring to your written response letter?
Yeah.
And what page, on the second page, what paragraph are you on?
Oh, I'm looking at the exhibit.
Are you on Exhibit 8?
Yes, I am.
Which is the letter from Brent Lawler, which, are you referring
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
section 5 of the charter provides as follows, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, just make sure, all right, thank you.
Okay, and then the city's interpretation, it's references number 8 in my. Okay, it's the second page of that exhibit.
Okay.
Has everybody gotten there?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm starting, I think that would be considered like the fourth paragraph. First line, one of the minimum requirements is that a municipal court judge must be a resident of the court to which the judge is elected. It doesn't say city or any specific city for that matter. And per the statute, the Cleveland Municipal Court's jurisdiction extends beyond the parameters of just the city of Cleveland. It extends to the city, to the village of Bradnock. So I question the validity or the accuracy of Ms. Crenshaw's interpretation based on just that reading along. Because if we were to go along with her interpretation, they would exclude the city of Bradnock.
If I may,
Yes,
quick question. You're referring to, again, the director of law, his opinion. But I want to refer to, Mike, because it doesn't speak to, even though it speaks to the residency requirement, it doesn't indicate in his opinion whether that requirement is at the time of filing or at the time that the person takes office. And again, if you could repeat what the Ohio, I think you said the Ohio Constitution provides, or what the General Assembly has provided, I can't remember. No, it's a statutory provision you referred to. Could you just share that with us again about what the state residency requirement is that is imposed in this connection with these candidate races?
Sure, Mr. Please, 1901.06A. A municipal judge during the term, during the judge's term of office shall be a qualified elector and a resident of the territory of the court to which the judge is elected or appointed. And I don't want to throw it around, without really full briefing it, but in 1925, the Supreme Court of Ohio changed the addressed the arguments of the issues. And they say that the judicial power stays the same because the manner indicated by the rules laid down by the expression of the sovereignty of the people themselves, to it, the Constitution. And then it goes into the judicial powers drawn from Article 4 of the Ohio Constitution, which is totally separate from Article 18 that provides for municipalities' power of local self-government and to enact general police power regulations that are not in conflict with general law. These provisions that are enacted by the legislature are not general laws, they are specific of the state. To say that a charter provision can then go change what the state has enacted through its General Assembly under the Constitution is contravention to Article 18 and Article 4.
Okay, I was going to ask you about the preemption question, but you just did. Thank you.
So I think it's must have, when he stated it coincides with what I said only in different languages, that there's no way that city of Cleveland can utilize home rule over another municipality. Plus, the language in this is specifically territory. It doesn't say city. I heard it, Mr. Busman say territory. The territory in this instance would include the city of Bradnock. So I would definitely say that on this job's interpretation.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or deliberations?
Was that just the one I spoke, just address that one issue with regards to
Well, we had two issues with you. You were the
Yeah.
petition and the residency.
the residency issue?
I think we're pretty solid on the petition.
Because we understand that, yes.
The residency question is again, I think a little nuanced. I think I'm following, I'm kind of deliberating my own mind and made a decision about it, but I mean, there's some issues around residency that it would, are worth discussing, and I think we've heard a little bit about, but I just, I'm troubled by the scope of the preemption, but I think I'm gonna have to consider it further, but I'm good with the testimony we've received.
Mr. Martin, were you trying to?
So you're saying that you don't need me to say, add anything further?
I don't think
with regards
I think that's.
No,
what we have
no
to
additional
address will be.
questions.
Okay, and I think those were the only two that applied to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin, were you trying to be recommended?
No, I think just going back to because this legislature does pull through certain aspects of city charters.
Yeah,
And it's the nominating and timing of, I'll pull it out specifically.
Form and filing.
Right, not qualifying electors for office, but kind of the procedure is what pulls through the charter.
yeah, and so how would the residency, I mean, this isn't really our issue, this is really for the charter folks to figure out. But I think that there needs to be,
I don't know though, because how could one charter apply to another city? So I think when you, see, that's where I'm stuck. Because if, let's say, charter Cleveland said, have for Cleveland municipal judge, I mean, I guess that would be my legal question.
I think,
but the first, the Ohio Constitution, or the 1906 provisions for the residency requirement.
yes. So. The Constitution is the rest of the way important to the establishments. I think it's simply has, and the city charter for certain aspects of the process. of that.
Yeah, but residency in that provision, in that same 1901 C. Nominating petition, and everybody seems to the time, the manner prescribed and the nominating petition section, but we don't have the state law provision that addresses this residency piece unless it's covered by 1906, with which you just.
That's my opinion. 1901.06 governs all municipal courts, and it states that during their term of office, they need to be a qualified elector and resident of the territory of the court to which the judge is elected. So,
Okay, so state law basically addresses the nominating petition issue as well as the residency issue. And the state law under 1906 simply indicates the candidate can file, but only has to be a resident at the time they take office. Is that correct?
correct.
Charter issues be determined to be running contrary to law. Is it just, for instance, when somebody sues, basically?
Well,
I mean, they're not reviewed, right? Charters, cities have to submit their charters to anyone
the voters,
for compliance. For
No.
compliance with Ohio law
that would be a
by case basis.
declaratory judgment, actually likely, but yeah, and I'm not sure I'm gonna answer the question directly, but the General Assembly has the authority to establish all this. They did pick Cleveland's charter for certain aspects. For the form, it shall be filed in the manner and within the time prescribed in the charter of the city of Cleveland. File petitions for municipal offices. So they pull that through.
Yeah.
But that doesn't speak to the timing and the form of the petition, but speak to the candidate that's on that petition.
Well, I guess the question would be is that this isn't at Cleveland, just they amended their charter.
When I
In
think,
the meantime, between whenever that was published, picking parts of the Cleveland charter that existed at the time. Is, I guess, where I'm going.
I think it's,
I'm not an attorney, so I'm kind of just
and
picking my way through here.
the folks, I think, on the charter review commission understood that municipal officers does not kind of set municipal judge.
Thank you, Mr. Musson. The issues before us, we've heard all the testimonies and board, I'm prepared to move to deny the protests. And I could show regarding the number of petitions that require judge. That's important to understand the 2023 general election. Joseph Matthews, candidate judge. Investment for the 2023 general election. Color candidate judge. For the 2023 general election. For Martin Sweeney, candidate for Cleveland Clerk of Courts for the November 7th, 2023 general election. Earl B. Turner, candidate for Cleveland Clerk of Courts for the November 7th, 2023 general election. And for Jocelyn Conwell regarding the number of petition signatures and residency requirement challenge for her candidacy for Judge Cleveland Municipal Court, November 7th, 2023 general election.
Those would be items 10
10
through,
through 14, all inclusive.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. It is so ordered. Thank you. We now call upon Mr. Christopher Latinowitz to come forth. Thank you. Yes, and we'll have Mr. Lawler. Sure, we got this first and.
Daniel G. Burns, Marcus Epps, Nika Hill, Christian Holzheimer Gale, who are also on out for mayor. His contention is that every acceptance of nomination on every proposition needs to be signed.
Yeah.
We have a legal opinions from the law director for the challenges. It's the same legal opinion that was provided to us in the 2015 and 2019. And both of those instances were unanimously denied the protest for use of units.
2009 or 2015?
2015 and 2019.
Okay.
Although this challenge has come up like 3 times since 2000. I thought 2009 was the first time we ruled on this. No,
That was the
I may be mistaken. Was it 20? I thought it was.
that was the requirement that all the electors had to be from the city. All the circulators had to be from the city.
Okay, so 2015, not 2009 is the accurate date.
The acceptance, yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
I think nothing has changed in the charter, nothing has changed in state law. And actually, the acceptance for nomination is not part of state law. It is a charter home rule requirement.
And thank you, Mr. Lawler, and I'll note that we did receive those documents in our packet from the Euclid Law Director. Chair will recognize Mr. Latinowitz. If you would come forth and if you please state and spell your name for the record and we'll swear you.
Christopher Michael Latinowitz, LITWINOWICZ.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do, sir. First off, this is a Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. This is our general jurisdiction. So is there any legal representation here? Is any of you got legal degrees?
Yes.
Does the law director have an election certificate? Or you could be a bankruptcy attorney like one of the candidates is. The opinion of the charter, several times, I've got years of coming to the podium, of being called out of order. This ain't, I'm living whatever you guys decide, because I'm on my way to the common pleas court. I only advise that because when all this is about crossing your eyes, it's about procedure. Nominations, elections. I also basically it's mayor, justice. So that little phrase at the beginning, when it says, when the other person is wrong.
Mr. Latinowitz, what is specifically that you're arguing?
James Burns. If you're running for government office, you need to use your first, middle, and last name. These petitions are improperly filed. As far as,
Excuse me.
can I get a few seconds without interruption?
This is
Yeah,
new
yeah,
information.
we're talking specifically for each part petition that you're that you protested to have the written acceptance for Ms. Gale, Mr. Burns, Ms. Hill, and Mr. Epps.
And also state law also states that a signature must be clearly identifiable. Point blank.
Is there anything that you want to
Passing
add?
exhibits right now.
Is there anything that you want to add?
That's what
to
I'm talking
what
right
you've
now.
already given us? Because what I want to do, we've heard from you, what I want to do now is ask.
Can I just stay on topic without, one
is that?
candidate at a time,
What do you
please?
have? Well, the chair will govern the
Right
meeting,
now, if you could show these.
okay?
These petitions are the actual timestamp copies. They only have a few that are accepting the nomination.
Excuse me, do we have copies for the respondents? too?
This is how you do the petition process, or how they check the signatures.
So we're clear that we're dealing with only the protest
The
that was,
protest.
that you.
Daniel James Burns, that's it.
We
right
have
now.
your written protest and
Yeah,
Right.
and I also filed, as is a courtroom, I also filed a motion for default judgments and summary judgments. I was never served upon.
Those are not,
Also,
those
the
are
law
not,
director
those are not
never,
applicable in this form, sir. So,
everything's applicable in this form.
sir, the chair will determine that. So now you have spoken. I'm going to now ask our respondents to come forth. If we have any persons,
Did she
Ms.
file a
Gale,
notice to
sir,
appear?
you are out of order. You're not to speak until the chair recognizes you.
This is not a
Mr.
judicial board.
Is Ms. Gale here?
So, yeah.
Mr. Mr. Burns, Ms. Hill, or Ms. Epps?
What does that have to do with-
Please step away. The chair recognizes you.
The protest that Mr. Lewis filed against each of these candidate respondents argues the same thing. That's, I'm reading from the document that was finished. And the argument and the protest is that each petition must have a written acceptance. This is each part petition must be accompanied by a written acceptance. That's the issue that we are.
The issue
Madam
that
Mr.
we
Chair,
have
that
for is those
Okay,
four
just wanted to
persons. So,
clarify.
Mr. Latinovich, you can step away from the podium. We will now hear in order if Ms. Gale is here or representative thereof, the chair will recognize you. And please state your name and spell it for the record.
Hi, good morning. This is me, I'm the city. Opinions for you. We have all candidates here. So, Mr. Burns, yes, he's not available. So, again, the law was stated, nothing's changed in the 2019, as long as one of the boxes are signed by candidates. All our petitions are submitted as one document, as long as one box is signed by the candidate. That should be sufficient. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have.
I just have a comment. I would, I noted that, the Charter Review Commission is looking at this. This is now the third time I think we're hearing the same issue. Looking at somebody in the Charter Review Commission address this. It needs to be a change to the charter today. Specifically clear. I mean, I think we've ruled the same way on this in each of the prior occasions, that you do not need to sign every single petition. But it would be helpful so we don't get another challenge on the same issue for the charter. I know you don't have control over everything. It would be helpful. I mean, again, this is going to be 3 times. This issue continues to come up. So again, and it's his right to raise again, but I'm just saying it. The footnote was leaping out off the pages of that chart.
So I did present a second item, but about residency of the simulators. That is going to be for sure. The other item is pretty clear that
right, to the labor, or folks might resonate. More fully.
I'll have.
But okay, so yeah, it was the other candidate circulator issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sweeney. Do any of our other respondents want to add to what the law director has said? Mr.
Yes.
Are you trying to add to what Ms. Sweeney said?
Oh,
And
yes,
so then-
sorry, the connection
then
is
we
quite
will-
bad. Okay, hello, everyone. I just wanted to add that I also object to the protest on the basis that it's not specific enough. Mr. Latinowitz argues that each circulator must be from the city of Euclid. We kind of assume that he's making a circulator residency protest, but that's not necessarily clear. And also that he doesn't actually specify which of the circulators would be violating this rule, even if it was a rule. Fortunately, it is not a rule because that would, as the law director has stated, would likely be unconstitutional. And then the other thing I wanted to add is that while the charter states that petition papers may be filed as one instrument, which would imply one signature, the revised code actually requires that all the petition papers be filed as one instrument, which again would imply that they all share one signature being one document. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Musk, yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my office concurs with the legal opinion of the city of Euclid.
Thank you.
We don't have
sir.
any objection.
Thank you. Lieutenant Witz?
Motion to rebut.
Sir, that's out of order. Only the board can make motions. So we've heard from you. It's now within the purview of the board. And so the board will now. Yeah, only the board can make motions.
I would just want to acknowledge that, we received all the documents again for this protest that was filed by and respondents. And so we have all the information that written acceptance and then the circulator issue, the two issues. I don't always feel like we need to be deferential to the law director and the community law directors, municipalities, when it comes to interpretations of their charter. And with respect to this acceptance of nomination issue, we've already heard this in prior years and ruled. And so for those reasons, I would move to deny the protest.
Okay, so the motion is in order to deny the protest filed by Christopher Latinowitz regarding each part petition needing to have written acceptance for the following candidates. And Marcus each running for the November 7th, 2023 general election. Motion has been made by Ms. Chappelle. Is there a second?
And
Second
those
by
are just,
Mr. McCaffrey.
and those covers items 15 through 18.
Those cover items 15 through 18 for the record. The motion is properly before us. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. So ordered. Your dismissal. Number 19. And I move the acknowledgement of candidate withdrawal for the November 7th, 2023 general election. The following candidates should run for member of council. And Rocky Ferguson, school district school board member. Second by Mr. Hearing all in favor, Aye, the ayes have it. Election officials, I move the approval to appoint not less than 2 precinct election officials for each precinct pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3501.22 for the November 2nd, 2023 election. Second by Ms. Chappelle. All in favor, aye. Ayes have it. The chair now recognizes Ms. Shankita Walker from Fiscal Services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Shakira Walker, Fiscal Manager. That's why I'm on the today. The first item I have to do is, the voucher for this. This is the voucher approval of the November 23 order information act. Not to see much $31,000. We did a bid for this operational process. Midwest was the most responsive vendor. Please note that their bid came in at $29,811. We have determined that we may have to send multiple files to the vendor for our November election. So we want to go ahead and do the purchase order for the additional cost for the multiple files at $315 per file. We're looking at an estimate of 550,000 voter information guide for the upcoming November election.
So we will take these separately. So I will move to approve the vouchers for FIS -V, letter 21A for Midwest Direct, the voter information guide. There's second. Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Now we're going to 21B, Ms. Walker.
Yeah, so 21B is the voucher amendment. So when we did the original request for the vote by mail application, in the bids, we asked for a cost if we wanted to extend to include our November. Seeing the outcome, we're gonna go ahead and extend our current purchase order weekly to include the November to take us to the end of the year, which would be an additional $31,470.80, which we got the bid we did originally for office. They want to extend it to December.
Thank you. I would move to approve the voucher for these mailing services for the $31,474.80.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Ms. Walker, 22A.
Yes, so 22A is amending our contract to include the August 2023 with Burns Moving and Storage. When we brought this before the board originally, the August election had not been identified as actually happening, so we want to add the cost to the contract for the for Midwest, which the additional is $55,000, $55,096.70, which will increase the total contract value till May 31st of 2025, not to exceed $264,219.84.
Very good. Thank you. I will move to approve the contract for Midfits Inc. doing business as Berman Moving and Storage.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. All in favor, aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
Our ballot center. Again, we're adding the additional cost for the August election at the time when this was approved and the election had not been authorized. So we're going to add an additional $454,990 to this contract to which expired May 31st, 2025, making the not to exceed contract value $2,496,901.96.
All right, I will move the approval of the contract for Midwest Free Sort Mailing Services doing business as Midwest Direct.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle.
Services and contracts to reflect the August election. But the additional costs, which are already over $500,000, are we being reimbursed for all of it, and what's the total amount that we know that we had to add this August election? Do you have that number handy? Can you get us that at some point and just let us confirm that the Secretary or the Secretary of State legislators somehow I could be working out for all the August stuff.
So the state has already gave us a check of $2.1 million.
There we go. That's a great number.
We already got that amount.
But that covers, does that cover these other, because we're just authorizing over $500,000 in extra.
So that they gave us that upfront. We have to get our itemized costs. Get all of our
Great.
Watching every day.
I'm trying. It's taxpayers' money here, so I'm trying.
And
We are.
in the state, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they have now given us a couple deadlines. We need to give them what our costs are sometime. in
September
September.
13th, any unused funds have to be returned, which we do not have. October 13th, we have to give them a complete itemized list of costs.
Great. So, whenever we have that information, if you could share that with the board, that would be great.
Great, we have a motion before us. Any other comments? All in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye. The ayes have it, it is so ordered. Thank you, Mr. Walker. I move, of Amy Allen, hired as program coordinator, election support, effective September 18th, 2023. Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. It is so ordered. Thank you. On to new business. We have, delivery.
The annual budget, it's that time of year, again, where all county agencies have to prepare their biannual budget for calendar years 24 and 25, and we are in that process. We hope at our next meeting to provide you with our budget recommendations, and then come back the following meeting and ask the board to approve that. We've already had one meeting with Tony, Shankita, and myself with the director of ODM, and went down and they have given us a base number to start with, which looks back to 4 years ago for each of those elections, but also takes into consideration inflationary measures, wage increases, and other costs, things that we've done. Again, we are at a good starting point with the initial amount that they have given us to work with. Shankita has pointed all the other in a presentable format. We do want to ask or recommend some additional new initiatives for this upcoming 2-year cycle. We're going to be aggressive in the last cycle, which was necessary, where we focused on getting poll worker wages increased, temporary employees' wages increased. So those things we will want to carry forward. So on those things that we had in the last budget, there are a few items that would be new that we want to go above and beyond for this 2-year cycle. And really it's 4. And because what's not, one of the things that was listed is we want that new operations center. We know that that will be costly. So we also know that that really is the main goal for this cycle and getting that. But with that, we want to ask for another Agilis inbound mail ballot machine that Brian Ferry uses. That's what right now. Definitely streamline processes. We will find this machine to have a process in the event that machine goes down. Also, the second machine, Ryan would able then to basically take passes through with this, and he'll be able to take off and increase his efficiencies by putting everything through the big machine and then peel something off and do that. So not only we have redundancy, but it won't sit there. We'll use it $350,000. The one we have now has 40 output trays. This one here, we're only asking for 12. Because every 4 output trays is another 25,000. So it's something we can build over time, but this would give us enough to be able to help us increase. So we want to ask for that, about 350,000 for the machine with the pockets. Temporary employee wage increases. Last cycle, we went from $11.50 to $15 an hour. What we want to do is we just want to have modest annual increases. So we want to give them a quarter an hour at 24, and another quarter an hour at 25. It's just a little under 2% each year. When we get our 2% cost of living, temporary employees don't get that. So we want to kind of now do that on an annual basis versus letting the gap get really big. And then all of a sudden we have to go and ask for a large amount to play catch up. We can look to that.
And then those keep us competitive on the open market too, because people will go and find other jobs.
Well,
So, yeah.
and what we do is we can we compete with retail
Right.
for a lot of our work, and obviously a lot of retail is in the neighborhoods. Other is more this one that money for a whole book upgrade through that advisory. We have money that's coming to us, but they so we've been talking to the county budget office about this, and now an advisory came out, and I think what they're doing will work. Probably go 24. So this is definite. 250,000, and that would be above and beyond the 800,000 plus that we'd be getting from the state to cover it. So. Yeah. No, they do certified equipment.
So is that going to testing and to the OBVNE?
Yeah, so same vendors that we have, 10X, NoLink, ES&S, but the versions of all they've gone through. So we want to take advantage of that funding. And then the last item that we'd like to do is kind of what we did for this August, in which instead of trying to find attrition dollars or the August money we're getting for this time, but for our countywide elections over the next 2 years, having the first 5 hours of overtime worked at straight rate pay versus accruing comp or exchange, it would be just what we've done in this year and what we did in 2020. First 5 hours of the week, 10 hours for a paid period, but we would limit that to just 3 paid periods. So it's not general election. And November 25. So it's what we're doing now. And having it in, so they're improve that. So energy time for tunes that they can't use. And so this way, also that money, and eventually we'll be surprised that we don't get some monetary compensation. So wanted to put that out. So it would just be most elections fall in that 2-year window. So for example, May and September of 25, which are less than countywide, and less than countywide sometimes have less hours, so it's not as demanding on staff. So those were the kind of the 4 things that we wanted to put out there that would be new, in addition to what we currently have, what we've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Director Galati referenced, we did get a new directive regarding electronic poll books for the purchase of. So a little bit of history, the last time we purchased electronic poll books was 2017. Tenix has been a good partner. They have a good product. One thing that we appreciate working with them is they made the necessary modifications for us as a paper-based county to help make things more efficient, where we can verify a person's ballot by the poll book being able to scan the barcode indicating the city ward precinct. But our iPad minis have run their course. As we get security patches and so forth from Apple, we've had to, Tenix has worked with Apple to create customized patches for us to be able to keep up with the security patches as well. House Bill 45 allocates, came along at the right time. They allocated $7.5 million statewide. They've come up with county based on our registered voter. He's able to receive $821,449 of reimbursement. There is June 30th deadline for all the paperwork, the memorandum of understanding, and the copy of the invoice and so forth must be in by May 1st. Some of the advantages, again, with the new iPad 10th generation would be what we would be purchasing is it has a larger screen, about 20 to 25% larger. That would be good for the voter because when they go to look at the screen and verify the information, they'll be able to have a larger screen to look at. Also, when they go to sign it, for our poll workers, the larger screen to look at. They just put the thing is the way that we do in the electronic will be the same screenshots. We're getting the same result. We're doing this operating the hardware, not software.
What's the total cost of the upgrade? It's like 120 grand.
Yeah,
reimbursement. What's the total?
Yeah, we haven't. One of the things moving forward was we will meet with staff to determine how many order. We will be purchasing new stands, cases, and so yeah.
So we matter because Secretary of State's office is working with Department of Administrative Services on getting like state term pricing. So similar to what we did with the voting equipment, and actually they just published something. Well, when they published it this week, there's some pricing that I just want to look at. So now we're waiting to see what exactly were the vendors able to negotiate or submit, I guess, with the states. So now we can start doing some of those calculations.
And the state does say that they recommend that we should purchase one electronic poll book for every precinct that we have. That would be at least 967. However, we purchased currently, I think we have about 1,200 poll books because we use them for backup and also for training purposes and so forth. So we'll just need to determine what that number is. And then, like I said, along with that, we will be purchasing new stands for the electronic poll books, as well as carrying cases and so forth with it.
Another question, if I might. So is there salvage out value for the other vehicle?
Like I said, they have to do the life cycle pretty much.
So
However, we're also looking at other purposes that we might be able to use them within the agency with, possibly rovers or so forth that we might utilize them there. But again, that is something we will be looking into as well. One of the advantages I was going to say for election day for the poll workers will be the fact right now with our clear access ADA unit, the poll worker has to manually type in the city ward precinct of the ballot that the voter will be utilized. With the new electronic poll book, because it prints a QR code, to be able to print off a QR code tied to that person's registration and then take it over to the ADA unit, scan that in, and they'll automatically bring the correct ballot up for that. So that's another advantage. Also, and I would say the final step of advantage would be for our IT department to be able to pass those information. Well, the other side is communication to what's at the polling location, and also also being able to receive all of the updates and patches as they come forward. So unfortunately, the supply chain issues are better than what they were before. Our hope is to be able to implement with the for the presidential in March. And overall, it will be a positive upgrade. So it is the beginning of a process, but fortunately, staying with the same vendor, which we are very satisfied with Tenex, will make it less of a bumpy transition. So,
That 900 or whatever, once we determine that money,
Yeah.
what the amount is that gonna be included in our budget? Is that?
That's one of the
included?
initiatives I asked for.
Included in the budget?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just kind of threw out $250,000, because I figure it's gonna probably be in the vicinity of about $1 million probably.
The old adage, a billion here, a million there, and then we're talking real money. Gallagher, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perlman.
And just last, just want to bring to your attention, so. Berman's, who has been our mover for a long time, we definitely had some hiccups with them for this August election. First time doing the new voting equipment, but more so with those new transport cages that we purchased, that we put all the booths in. And so there was a couple instances where Berman's, a couple areas where they erred. They're not supposed to stack the scanners we send them out to both places, and they did do that in some instances. We had to send that out there and stack them because those things are not right. And then some of the timelines on getting things out and getting things back was delayed. There's a lot of money put on these cages, and I think there's all this other kind of stuff. So it's they haven't given us the exact detail. They would give us generality. So no, we need a list of specifics. So we have a meeting meeting with them this Thursday. We've had some preliminary minor discussion. They do understand that they dropped the ball in some regards, and that's not acceptable. So we want to sit down. We really want to know what are the true issues? Where were they deficient just because it was learning, or they didn't have enough trucks on the road, or whatever it is? But we can't have that.
So just if we get just a little more detail, so when did we discover these problems on the night on the organizational meeting when the equipment was delivered to? When did we discover these problems, and what kind of consequences were there delays in opening? What were the issues really associated from the stacking?
So as far as the stacking is concerned, so what we do is Victor, we have the schedule when Berman's delivers, and then we send out a team of employees a day or two behind, we call them chasing. They go to all, they make sure that, in fact, they did deliver all the pieces, parts, and they're delivered correctly. When we were doing some of that chasing, that's when we started to see this.
When does that occur?
It starts within a couple days after them doing their deliveries.
So the
So
deliveries are going to the locations when?
those start between 10 and 14 days. Yes, so we were able to get that. Now, not every delivery was stacked. So the first ones, there wasn't some of that, and now you can see it here and there. And we made it work, we'll do it, and they did do some of that on those final Monday deliveries. And luckily, when we go on Mondays, is when we take electronic poll books out. Specifically, we don't chase something to get other things, but we delivering those poll books, we were in a location like what the heck. So we were able to get that squared away beforehand. But that can't be the normal case of business. For one, not good for the equipment. And, it's gonna, it falls over, things are gonna break. You can't have that.
They've done that before, have they?
No. Well,
Maybe they have new staff. It'd be interesting to hear how this happened.
yeah, and you couldn't really stack the former equipment, but now these new ones, because you can stack them for storage. So there was that piece, and then these cages, that was more so, that was them complaining that. I mean, some of them are a little bit bigger than what they were doing before, but to the level of what they were saying, I think it became an excuse. And I think that when you dive a little bit deeper, some days they just didn't have enough staff working on our assignment. So they're admitting some of those things. This is everyone back. Document it, make should happen before. Otherwise, otherwise we will have to execute penalties that lie within the contract.
And I'm sure Mr. Musson's well versed on the contract and can keep us on track with that.
I'm hopeful that, these are anomalies, that these are fixable problems and, we can continue to have a good relationship. I'm hopeful.
I think, I'm going into it where they are already have some admissions.
Right.
So I think that's good, right? So it's not like a complete and total fight.
We appreciate your diligence and election support. Mr. Rush indicated some things about that as well. So we know that you're on top of it. And like you said, they've been a good partner and we hope that their actions will make them continue to be so that we don't have to make other messages. I do not have any public comments requests before me, and there being no other business for us. Yeah. And secretary. We do have a public comment coming at all, so Mr. White is taking care of the floor.
Protest.
You can come up, man. And before you speak, let me just read into the record what we have. Thank you, Mr. White. Appreciate it. We do have a public comment from Gilder Malone. And Ms. Malone, if you would please state for the record your name and spell it, and then you will have up to 5 minutes for public comment.
Okay, I don't think I'll take the 5 minutes. My name is Gilda, Gilder Malone, Malone. Thank you for allowing me to move this out of my screen. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the Board of Elections Board and the chair. My name is Gilda Malone and I'm a Cuyahoga registered voter and a staunch Republican. When you view the provisional voting matters, please understand Cleveland is 66% illiterate. As a born citizen of Montgomery, Alabama, and once a first-time voter in Montgomery, Alabama, I am the great godchild of E.D. Nixon, a person who has ran as a city official in Cleveland in 2017. I am asking that you, as a board of elections, continue to understand is not a privilege. I've heard a few things in this meeting. 50-50 versus 3,000 signatures need to be clear. Preempted. Don't sound good to me. Charter revised. Don't sound good to me. I'm not an attorney from one of the board members. My concern is law for the citizens of Cuyahoga County. Thank you. When I use the words, some of the words I want to keep in the thank you.
Thank you, everybody.